My jealous brother photoshopped evidence that I cheated and sent it to my girlfriend. I was in the middle of a product demo for a client in Chicago when my phone started vibrating with the kind of persistence that meant something was catastrophically wrong. 3 missed calls from Claire, 2 from my best friend Leo, and a text from my mother that just said, "Call me immediately." I excused myself from the conference room, my hands already shaking because you don't get that combination of messages unless someone died or your life just exploded in some spectacular way. Claire answered on the first ring, and I could hear she'd been crying for hours. Her voice was raw and broken in a way I'd never heard before, not even when her grandmother passed last year. "How could you do this to me?" she said, and my entire body went cold because I had absolutely no idea what she was talking about. "Claire, what's happening? What did I do?" I asked, already running through a mental checklist of everything that had happened in the past week. I'd been traveling for work, mostly boring hotel rooms and client meetings, nothing remotely suspicious or problematic. "Don't play dumb with me, Nathan. Your brother sent me the photos. All of them. My brother, Cameron." The name hit me like a physical blow because Cameron had been doing this kind of thing my entire life, but never anything this nuclear. "What photos? Claire, I swear to God I don't know what you're talking about." She made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "The photos of you in Atlanta last month, at the Marriott downtown, with that woman. Multiple photos, Nathan. In the lobby, in the elevator, going into a hotel room together, her hand on your chest, you kissing her. Don't tell me you don't remember because the timestamps are right there on every single image." My mind was racing because I had been in Atlanta last month for a conference, and I had stayed at the Marriott downtown, but I definitely hadn't kissed anyone or taken anyone back to my room. I'd spent most evenings having dinner with colleagues or working on presentations in my room. "Claire, listen to me. I was in Atlanta for the medical device conference. You knew about that trip, but I didn't cheat on you. I would never cheat on you." "Then explain the photos," she said, her voice getting harder now, moving from devastated to angry. "Explain why your own brother would send me detailed evidence of you hooking up with someone if it wasn't true. Why would Cameron do that if you weren't actually cheating?" That was the question, wasn't it? Why would Cameron send fake evidence of me cheating unless he had something to gain from destroying my relationship? But even as I thought it, I knew the answer. Cameron had been jealous of me since we were kids, and Claire was the best thing that had ever happened to me, which meant she was exactly the kind of thing Cameron would want to take away. "Send me the photos," I said. "Right now. I need to see what he sent you." There was a long pause, and I could hear her breathing on the other end, deciding whether to trust me or not. "What's the point? So you can come up with some explanation? So you can gaslight me into thinking I didn't see what I saw? Claire, please. 3 years together should buy me at least the chance to see what I'm being accused of." She hung up, and for a terrible moment I thought she'd decided not to send them. Then my phone buzzed with an incoming message containing 6 image files. I opened them with hands that were genuinely shaking now, and what I saw made my stomach drop. The photos looked completely real. There I was in the Marriott lobby, wearing the exact navy suit I'd worn to the opening keynote. There I was in the elevator with a blonde woman in a red dress, her hand resting on my chest in a gesture that looked intimate and familiar. There I was outside a hotel room door, my hand on the small of her back as she smiled up at me. And then the worst one, a photo that showed me kissing this woman in what appeared to be the hotel room itself, her arms around my neck, my hands on her waist, both of us clearly engaged in something that was not business-related, except it wasn't me. I mean, it was me, but it wasn't. I stared at the images, zooming in on details, and that's when I started noticing the small inconsistencies. The lighting in the elevator photo was slightly off, the shadows falling in a direction that didn't quite match the overhead lights. In the kissing photo, the color balance of my face was infinitesimally different from my hands, like someone had taken my face from one photo and seamlessly blended it into another scene. My watch was wrong too. In the lobby photo, I was wearing my Seiko, the one Claire had given me for my birthday. But in the kissing photo, I was wearing a completely different watch, something I'd never owned. These were photoshopped, professionally done, disturbingly convincing, but fake. My brother had taken real photos of me from the conference, probably pulled from social media or the conference website, and digitally inserted me into romantic scenarios with some random woman. The question was how to prove it, and more importantly, why Cameron had decided to blow up my life so completely and meticulously this time. I called Claire back immediately. She didn't answer. I tried 3 more times before finally leaving a voicemail. "These photos are fake. They're photoshopped. I can prove it. Please, just give me a chance to show you." Then I called my mother, because if Cameron had sent these to Claire, he'd probably been spinning some story to the rest of the family too. Mom answered with that particular tone of disappointment that only mothers can truly perfect. "Nathan, your father and I are extremely upset about what Cameron told us. We didn't raise you to treat women this way. So he'd gotten to them first, established his narrative before I even knew what was happening. Classic Cameron. Mom, whatever Cameron told you is a lie. He photoshopped fake evidence to make it look like I cheated on Claire. This is exactly the kind of thing he's been doing our whole lives. Just bigger." She sighed. the kind of sigh that meant she'd already decided I was making excuses. Honey, I know you and Cameron have your issues, but why would he go to all that trouble? What would he possibly gain from lying about something like this? What would he gain? Let me count the ways. Cameron had spent 28 years being the older brother who couldn't quite measure up, and he'd spent every single one of those years resenting me for it. When we were kids, I made honor roll and he barely passed. I got into Stanford while he went to community college. I landed a job at a major medical device company while he bounced between sales gigs. When I got promoted to senior account manager last year, making more money at 26 than he'd ever made at 30, he'd stopped speaking to me for 3 months. And when I introduced Claire to the family 8 months ago, and everyone loved her immediately, I'd seen something shift in his expression, a calculation, cold and deliberate. He'd been charming to her face, overly so actually, but I'd caught him watching us together with this look of pure resentment. At Thanksgiving, he'd cornered me in the kitchen and said, "You don't deserve her, you know. Someone like Claire should be with someone more experienced, more established." At the time, I'd thought he was just being his usual jealous self. Now I realized he'd been planning something. "Mom, I need you to listen to me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Cameron has been competing with me our entire lives. Every time something good happens to me, he tries to undermine it. Remember when I got accepted to Stanford? He told everyone I only got in because of affirmative action, even though we both know that wasn't true. Remember when I got my job? He spread rumors that I'd slept with someone in HR. This is the same pattern, just escalated." There was silence on the other end, and I could practically hear her wanting to defend Cameron, wanting to believe that both her sons were good people who would never deliberately hurt each other. "That's not fair, Nathan. Cameron has always been supportive of you in his own way. You know he struggles with self-esteem issues. Maybe he's acting out because he feels left behind." And there it was, the excuse I'd heard my whole life. Cameron feels left behind. Cameron needs support. Cameron's just going through a hard time. Never mind that his hard times always seemed to coincide with my good times, or that his methods of dealing with insecurity involved systematically sabotaging my relationships, my reputation, my peace of mind. I spent the next hour calling everyone Cameron might have contacted. He'd been thorough. He'd sent the photos to Claire's best friend Simone, to my colleague Derek, who'd been at the Atlanta conference with me, to our mutual friend group chat. He'd even sent them to Claire's parents, which was a particularly vicious touch because her father already had reservations about me being good enough for his daughter. Everyone had the same reaction, a mixture of shock, disappointment, and the kind of certainty that comes from photographic evidence. Nobody wanted to believe that Cameron would fabricate something so elaborate. It was easier to believe that I'd cheated and gotten caught. I sat in my car in the parking garage, going through the photos again and again, screenshotting details that looked wrong, making notes about inconsistencies. The woman in the photos was attractive, mid-20s, blonde, looked vaguely like someone who could be a pharmaceutical rep or conference attendee, but I'd never seen her before in my life, which meant Cameron had either hired someone to pose for photos, or more likely, he'd found random stock photos or social media images and digitally composited everything together. That's when I remembered something. The conference had been photographed extensively by the event organizers. They'd posted hundreds of photos to their website and social media, documenting keynotes, networking sessions, exhibition halls. If Cameron had pulled my images from there, I should be able to find the original, unaltered versions. I spent the next 3 hours combing through the conference website, the event's Instagram account, LinkedIn posts from attendees, and there it was, the lobby photo. In the original, I was standing alone, checking my phone, no blonde woman anywhere near me. The image was high resolution, professionally shot by the conference photographer. Cameron had downloaded it, digitally inserted the woman, adjusted the lighting and shadows to make it seamless, and created what looked like a candid moment between two people who'd never actually been in the same room. I found 3 more of the original photos this way. Each time I'd been alone or with my colleague Derek, and Cameron had systematically removed the real context and replaced it with manufactured infidelity. The kissing photo was trickier because it seemed to be from a completely different source, probably a stock photo or a staged image he'd bought online and then superimposed my face onto. I called Leo, my best friend since college, the only person I knew who understood both technology and Cameron's capacity for psychological warfare. Leo worked as a data analyst and had a side hobby of digital forensics, mostly for fun, sometimes for friends who needed help with tech problems. "I need you to look at some photos," I said without preamble. "Cameron sent them to Claire and they look real, but they're not. I need you to prove they've been manipulated." Leo made a sound that suggested he wasn't even remotely surprised. What did he do this time? Made it look like I cheated on Claire. 6 photos, all photoshopped, all sent to everyone who matters in my life. She's not answering my calls. My family thinks I'm a lying cheater, and Cameron is probably sitting at home feeling very pleased with himself. Leo was quiet for a moment. "Send them to me, all of them. I'll run them through some analysis software, check the metadata, look at the pixel-level alterations. If they're fake, I'll find the proof." I sent the files immediately, along with the original conference photos I'd found. "How long will this take?" "Give me until tomorrow morning. I want to be thorough, Make sure the analysis is airtight. You're going to need hard evidence if you want people to believe you over photographic proof. That night was one of the longest of my life. Claire wouldn't answer my calls or respond to my texts. Her roommate Simone sent me a message saying Claire needed space, and I should respect that, which was code for, "We all think you're trash, and you need to leave her alone." My mother called again, this time with my father on the line too, and we had a painful conversation where they suggested maybe I should see a therapist to work through whatever issues led me to cheat. No amount of explaining that the photos were fake seemed to penetrate their certainty. Cameron had called them first, played the concerned brother who'd accidentally discovered evidence of my infidelity and felt morally obligated to tell Claire. He'd apparently been very convincing, full of reluctance and sadness about exposing his younger brother's betrayal. I tried to explain the timeline of how I'd found the original conference photos, but Dad cut me off. "Nathan, if you made a mistake, the honorable thing is to own it, not concoct increasingly elaborate stories about being framed by your own brother." The irony of being lectured about honor by parents who'd spent my entire childhood excusing Cameron's behavior wasn't lost on me, but I was too exhausted to argue anymore. I tried to sleep, but couldn't, so I spent the hours between midnight and dawn doing something I should have done years ago. I started documenting every instance of Cameron sabotaging me, not just recent events, but everything going back to childhood. When I was 12, I'd won the science fair with a project on solar energy. Cameron, who was 16 at the time, told everyone I'd plagiarized it from the internet. It wasn't true, but it was enough to make the judges do a secondary review, which delayed my advancement to the regional competition. When I was 17 and got accepted to Stanford, Cameron told my extended family that I'd lied on my application about extracurricular activities. Again, not true, but it poisoned the celebration, made people wonder if my achievements were legitimate. When I started dating my college girlfriend Maya, Cameron befriended her on social media and spent months subtly undermining our relationship, pointing out my flaws, suggesting I was too focused on my career to really prioritize her. They broke up after 8 months, and Maya later told me she'd felt constantly anxious about whether I was as committed as she was, though she couldn't quite explain why. That was Cameron's specialty, planting doubt, undermining confidence, always with plausible deniability. By the time the sun came up, I had 17 pages of documented incidents, dates, witnesses, outcomes, a pattern so clear and consistent that it should have been obvious to everyone years ago. But patterns are only visible when you step back far enough to see the full picture, and I'd been too close, too invested in maintaining some fantasy of normal sibling relationships. I'd wanted to believe that Cameron's behavior was just standard sibling rivalry, that he'd grow out of it, that underneath the competition was genuine brotherly love. I'd been wrong. Cameron didn't love me. He resented me. And that resentment had been building for so long that destroying my relationship with Claire probably felt like justice to him, like finally evening a score that existed only in his head. Leo called at 7 in the morning. "The photos are definitely fake. I can prove it 6 different ways." I felt relief wash through me so intensely that I had to sit down. "Tell me everything." "Okay, so first, the metadata. The photos were created on a computer, not taken by a camera or phone. The EXIF data shows they were exported from Photoshop, not captured by any camera device. Second, when I ran them through forensic analysis software, it detected multiple layers of manipulation. The woman in the photos comes from at least 3 different source images, digitally combined and blended. Your face shows clear signs of being isolated and composited onto different body angles. Third, the lighting is mathematically inconsistent in 4 of the 6 images. The shadows fall in directions that are physically impossible given the visible light sources. Fourth, there are compression artifacts around your face in the kissing photo that indicate it was taken from a lower resolution source and upscaled, which is why it looks slightly softer than the rest of the image. "Can you put all of this in a report?" I asked, already thinking about who needed to see this evidence. "Way ahead of you. I'm sending you a full forensic analysis with annotated images showing every manipulation, every inconsistency, every piece of technical proof that these photos are fabricated. Anyone with basic knowledge of digital forensics will be able to verify my findings." The report arrived in my email 10 minutes later, 38 pages of detailed analysis that read like something from a criminal investigation. Leo had highlighted every pixel-level alteration, every metadata anomaly, every lighting inconsistency. He'd even identified the probable source of the original images, including a stock photo website where similar shots of the blonde woman appeared. More importantly, he'd included a section on intentional fabrication, explaining that the level of manipulation detected wasn't consistent with casual photo editing or filters. This was deliberate, skilled work designed to create false evidence of infidelity. Someone had spent hours, maybe days, carefully crafting these images to be as convincing as possible. This wasn't a prank or a joke. This was calculated character assassination. I drove to Claire's apartment without calling first. Simone answered the door with her arms crossed, blocking the entrance like a bouncer at a club. "She doesn't want to see you. I have proof. The photos are fake. I have a full forensic analysis from a digital expert showing exactly how they were manipulated." Simone's expression didn't change. "That's really convenient, Nathan. Your brother sends photos of you cheating, and suddenly you have a tech expert friend who can prove they're fake? Do you hear how that sounds? It sounds like I'm telling the truth. Cameron has been sabotaging me our entire lives. This is just the biggest, most destructive thing he's done. Please, Simone, just let me show Claire the report. If she looks at the evidence and still thinks I cheated, I'll leave and never bother her again. But she deserves to see the technical proof before making any permanent decisions. Simone studied my face for a long moment, and I could see her wavering. Wait here. She disappeared back into the apartment, and I could hear muffled conversation. Then Claire appeared at the door. She looked terrible. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing sweatpants and one of my old Stanford t-shirts, which somehow made this whole situation even more painful. You have 5 minutes, she said, her voice flat and exhausted. I handed her my phone with the forensic report pulled up. This is from Leo. He analyzed the photos Cameron sent you. They're fake, photoshopped. I can prove it. She took the phone reluctantly, and I watched her face as she scrolled through the report, reading the technical explanations, looking at the annotated images that showed exactly where and how the photos had been manipulated. I could see her expression shifting from skepticism to confusion to something that looked like cautious hope. This is real? This analysis is legitimate? Leo does digital forensics as a side business. He's worked with lawyers and investigators before. Every piece of analysis in that report can be verified by other experts. The photos Cameron sent you were created on a computer using Photoshop. I was never with that woman. I didn't cheat on you. My brother fabricated evidence to destroy our relationship. Claire looked up at me, and I could see she wanted to believe me. But years of trust issues from previous relationships were fighting against the technical evidence in front of her. Why would Cameron do this? What does he gain from destroying your relationship? He's jealous. He's always been jealous. Every time something good happens to me, he finds a way to undermine it. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, which makes you the perfect target. If he can take you away from me, he wins. That's how his brain works. Claire was quiet for a long time, still holding my phone, still staring at the forensic report. I believe you, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. But Nathan, if your brother is capable of this, of spending days creating fake photos just to destroy your relationship, what else is he capable of? How do you stay safe from someone like that? It was a good question, and I didn't have a good answer. I confront him. I show this evidence to my family. I make sure everyone knows what he did, and then I cut him out of my life completely. That's going to destroy your family. He already destroyed it. I'm just making sure everyone knows who's actually responsible. I spent the rest of that day forwarding Leo's forensic report to everyone Cameron had sent the fake photos to. Claire's parents, Simone, Derek, our mutual friends, my parents. Along with the report, I included a message. Cameron fabricated these photos using Photoshop. This is a pattern of behavior that has been ongoing for years. I'm including a full forensic analysis that proves the images were digitally manipulated and never represented real events. I'm also including documentation of previous incidents where Cameron has sabotaged my relationships, my career, and my reputation. I'm done pretending this is normal sibling rivalry. What Cameron did was deliberate psychological warfare, and I won't allow him to escape accountability this time. The responses came quickly. Claire's parents called to apologize, saying they should have given me the benefit of the doubt. Derek forwarded my message to several colleagues at work who'd heard about the photos, helping to protect my professional reputation. Simone sent a text saying she was sorry for doubting me and that Claire deserved better than to be used as a weapon in a family feud. But my parents' response was different. Dad called, and I could hear the conflict in his voice. Nathan, we read the forensic report. It's very convincing, but we need to hear Cameron's side of this before making any judgments. His side? Dad, there's no side to this. He created fake evidence. That's not a matter of perspective. Your mother and I think we should all sit down together as a family and discuss this like adults. Cameron deserves the chance to explain himself. The fact that Cameron deserved anything after what he'd done made my blood pressure spike, but I agreed to the meeting because I wanted to see him try to explain this away. The meeting was scheduled for the following Saturday at my parents' house. 5 days of waiting, during which Cameron apparently told my mother that I'd fabricated the forensic report, that Leo was lying to cover for me, that this was all part of my pattern of never taking responsibility for my mistakes. By the time Saturday arrived, my mother had convinced herself that the truth was probably somewhere in the middle, that both her sons were equally wrong in different ways. I arrived 30 minutes early and set up my laptop in the living room, preparing a presentation that included the forensic report, the original conference photos, the documented timeline of Cameron's previous sabotage attempts, and testimony from Maya, my college girlfriend, who'd agreed to speak on camera about how Cameron had systematically undermined our relationship. Cameron showed up exactly on time, dressed like he was going to a business meeting, all confidence and performative concern. Hey, little brother, glad we could all get together to clear this up. The casual way he said it, like we were just sorting out a misunderstanding about whose turn it was to host Thanksgiving, made me want to punch him, but I stayed calm, methodical. When everyone was seated in the living room, our parents on the couch, Cameron in Dad's recliner, me standing by the laptop, I began the presentation. I'm going to show you exactly what Cameron did, how he did it, and why. and then we're going to discuss what consequences are appropriate for someone who commits this level of betrayal. I walked them through the forensic report first, explaining in simple terms how Leo had detected the digital manipulation, showing them the metadata that proved the photos were created in Photoshop, not captured by a camera. I showed them the original conference photos, demonstrating how Cameron had downloaded images of me and digitally inserted a fictional woman to create false evidence. Then I played Maya's video testimony, where she explained how Cameron had befriended her during our relationship, constantly pointing out my flaws, making her doubt my commitment, ultimately contributing to our breakup. Mom's face went through several emotions during the presentation: shock, disbelief, sadness, and finally something that looked like anger, though I wasn't sure if it was directed at Cameron or at me for exposing him. Dad kept looking at Cameron, waiting for some explanation that would make this make sense. When I finished, Cameron leaned back in the chair and smiled, not his usual charming smile, but something colder, more honest. You want to know why I did it? Fine, I'll tell you why. Because you've spent your entire life making me look like a failure. You get good grades, I look stupid. You get into Stanford, I look lazy. You get promoted, I look unsuccessful. You find the perfect girlfriend, I look alone. Everything you do makes my life worse by comparison. So yeah, I tried to take away something that made you look so goddamned superior. You want me to feel guilty about it? I don't. I feel like I finally fought back against a lifetime of being compared to you and found wanting. The honesty was startling, like he'd been waiting years to say this out loud. You think I made you look bad? I said, my voice shaking now. I didn't do anything to you. I just lived my life. The comparison was in your head, Cameron. I never asked to be measured against you. I never wanted this competition. You created it because you couldn't stand the idea that maybe, just maybe, we're different people with different strengths and different paths. Easy to say when you're the one winning. Winning? You think this is winning? Cameron, you spent days creating fake photos to destroy my relationship. You weaponized technology, family relationships, and trust to hurt me as badly as possible. That's not fighting back. That's psychological warfare. And you did it because you can't handle your own insecurity without making it everyone else's problem. Mom finally spoke, her voice small and broken. Cameron, is what Nathan's saying true? Did you really fabricate those photos? He looked at her with something like defiance. Yeah, I did. And if I hadn't messed up the metadata, nobody would have known. Nathan would have lost Claire. And for once in his perfect life, he'd have to deal with something not working out. Dad stood up, and I'd never seen him look so old, so tired. Get out. What? Cameron said, genuinely surprised. Get out of this house. I don't care where you go, but you're not staying here. What you did wasn't sibling rivalry or competition. It was cruel, calculated, and unforgivable. Nathan is right. This is psychological warfare, and I won't have someone capable of that level of manipulation living under our roof or participating in this family. Mom started to protest, to say something about Cameron needing support, about both sons deserving love, but Dad cut her off. No, not this time. We've made excuses for him for 30 years. We've enabled this behavior by pretending it was normal. That ends now. Cameron, you have 2 weeks to find another place to live. After that, you're not welcome here. Cameron stood up slowly, looking at each of us like he was memorizing our faces. You're all going to regret this. Nathan's not the saint you think he is. Give it time, you'll see. He left without another word, and the silence he left behind felt heavy and permanent. Mom started crying, quiet tears that she tried to hide. Dad just stood there, staring at the front door like he couldn't quite believe what had just happened. Over the next few weeks, the fallout spread in ways I hadn't anticipated. Cameron moved to a different city, took a job in Phoenix, and effectively disappeared from our lives. He blocked all of us on social media, changed his phone number, and made it clear he wanted nothing to do with the family that had, in his view, chosen Nathan over him. Mom struggled with this, caught between relief that the conflict was over and grief over losing her oldest son. She'd call me sometimes late at night, asking if I thought there was any way to fix things, to bring Cameron back into the fold. I'd remind her gently that Cameron had spent 30 years deliberately sabotaging me, that his behavior wasn't a mistake or a phase, it was a pattern of psychological abuse that wouldn't stop unless he took accountability and got serious help. She'd agree in the moment, but I could hear the doubt in her voice, the maternal instinct that insisted both her children were somehow equally responsible for the breakdown of their relationship. Dad was different. He seemed almost relieved, like he'd been waiting for permission to stop pretending everything was fine. He told me one night over beer in his garage that he'd known for years that Cameron's behavior was abnormal, but he hadn't known how to address it without tearing the family apart. I thought if we just loved him enough, supported him enough, he'd grow out of the jealousy. I was wrong. Claire and I went to therapy together, working through the trauma of having our relationship weaponized by someone who was supposed to be family. The therapist explained that what Cameron had done was a form of psychological abuse called gaslighting by proxy, where he'd used fabricated evidence to make Claire question her own perception of reality. It had worked, because photographic evidence carries a certain authority that verbal testimony doesn't. Our brains are wired to trust what we see, even when what we're seeing has been carefully manipulated to deceive. The therapist also helped me understand that my relationship with Cameron had never been healthy, that I'd spent my entire life trying to minimize his behavior, to maintain some fantasy of normal brotherhood that had never actually existed. She pushed me to examine why I'd tolerated decades of sabotage without establishing firm boundaries. Part of it was family pressure, the constant messaging that keeping the peace was more important than protecting myself. Part of it was guilt, some misplaced sense that I was responsible for Cameron's feelings of inadequacy, but mostly, it was hope. I'd kept hoping that eventually Cameron would see me as an ally instead of an enemy. That hope had kept me vulnerable to his manipulation. 6 months after the confrontation, I got a call from an unknown Phoenix number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Cameron, his voice different, less confident. "Nathan, I need to tell you something. I've been going to therapy, dealing with a lot of shit. My therapist says I need to make amends with the people I've hurt. So here it is. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the photos, for Maya, for every time I tried to make your life harder because I couldn't handle my own feelings of inadequacy. You didn't deserve any of it. You were just living your life, and I made it about me." I was quiet for a long moment, processing whether this apology was genuine or just another manipulation. "Are you sorry because you understand what you did was wrong? Or are you sorry because you faced consequences?" He laughed, a bitter sound. "Probably both, if I'm honest. But yeah, I understand what I did was fucked up. I spent 30 years being angry at you for existing, for being good at things, for having relationships that worked. That's insane. You didn't do anything to me except be yourself. The comparison, the competition, the resentment, that was all my creation. What do you want from me, Cameron? Forgiveness? Permission to come back to the family? No, I'm not coming back. Even if you'd let me, which you shouldn't, I can't be around you without falling back into those old patterns. My therapist says I need to build my own identity separate from yours, figure out who I am when I'm not measuring myself against you. So I'm staying in Phoenix. I have a new job, new friends, a therapist I actually like. I'm working on becoming someone who doesn't need to tear other people down to feel okay about myself. I wanted to believe him, but 3 decades of betrayal had taught me to be skeptical. If this is real, if you're actually changing, then I'm glad for you. But I can't have you in my life anymore. The damage is too deep. What you did to Claire, to me, to our family, that's not something I can just forgive and move on from. I know. I'm not asking for that. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. What I did was wrong. You deserved better from me. And I'm working on being someone who wouldn't do that shit anymore. He hung up, and I stood there holding the phone, feeling something I hadn't expected. Sadness. Not for what Cameron had done, but for what could have been if he'd gotten help years ago. If he'd chosen therapy instead of sabotage. If our parents had intervened instead of making excuses. Claire and I got married the following spring, a small ceremony on the coast with just close friends and family. Mom attended, though she looked sad throughout the event, probably thinking about the son who wasn't there. Dad gave a toast that acknowledged the complicated family history without dwelling on it, focusing instead on how Claire and I had built something strong enough to survive external attacks. During the reception, Leo pulled me aside. "I have something to tell you, and you're not going to like it." My stomach dropped, because that preamble never preceded good news. "Cameron contacted me last month. He wanted to apologize for putting me in the middle of your family drama. But he also asked if I could do him a favor." "What kind of favor?" "He wanted me to run a forensic analysis on some photos. Said he was worried someone might be doing to him what he did to you. I told him I'd think about it. Then I looked at the photos he sent. Nathan, they were real. Someone actually is catfishing him, using his information to create fake dating profiles, starting relationships online and then ghosting people after getting money from them." I processed this information slowly, trying to figure out how I felt about Cameron being victimized in a way that echoed his own crimes. "What did you tell him?" "I told him the photos were real, but that I couldn't help him beyond that. That he needed to contact the police and a cybersecurity expert. He thanked me and said he understood why I wouldn't want to get more involved. The irony wasn't lost on me. Cameron had spent years creating false narratives about me, and now someone was creating false narratives about him. Karma had a sense of humor, apparently. "Do you think he learned something from this?" Leo asked. "I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe he just learned what it feels like to be on the receiving end of manipulation. Are you going to help him?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. Part of me wanted to let him suffer the consequences of living in a world where digital evidence could be easily fabricated, where trust was fragile, where someone with enough skill and motivation could destroy your reputation without ever speaking to you. But another part of me, the part that remembered being 12 years old and looking up to my older brother, the part that still had some remnant of familial obligation, couldn't quite abandon him completely. "Give me his contact information. I'll send him the name of a cybersecurity firm that specializes in identity theft and catfishing. But that's it. I'm not getting more involved than that." Leo nodded, understanding. "That's probably more than he deserves." "Yeah, but maybe it's what I need to do to finally close this chapter." I sent Cameron the information that night, along with a brief message. "Leo told me what's happening. This should help. Consider us even." He responded the next morning. "Thank you. And no, we're not even. What I did was deliberate. What's happening to me is random. but I appreciate the help anyway. I hope you and Claire have a great life together. That was the last time I heard from Cameron. No more apologies, no more attempts at reconciliation, just silence. Mom still talks to him occasionally, tells me he's doing better, has a girlfriend now, is still in therapy. Dad asks about him sometimes but doesn't push for a reunion. The family has adjusted to the absence, learned to function with one less person at holiday dinners, one less name on group text threads. And me? I've learned that you can love someone and still need them out of your life. That family isn't just about blood and shared history, it's about trust and safety and mutual respect. That sometimes the kindest thing you can do for everyone involved is establish boundaries that protect you from people who can't or won't stop hurting you. Claire and I talk about having kids someday, and I wonder what I'll tell them about the uncle they'll never meet. The truth, probably. That people are complicated. That jealousy can turn love toxic. That you can survive betrayal, but you don't have to maintain relationships with people who betrayed you. That forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation, and moving on sometimes means moving away from people who make your life smaller and more painful. 2 years after the wedding, I got an email from Cameron's therapist. She explained that Cameron had given permission for her to contact me, that he'd wanted me to know he'd completed a treatment program for personality disorders, and had made significant progress in understanding and changing his behavioral patterns. The email included a final letter from Cameron, handwritten and scanned. Nathan, by the time you read this, I'll have finished 2 years of intensive therapy. I've been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder and obsessive-compulsive tendencies related to comparison and competition. Understanding the clinical basis for my behavior doesn't excuse it, but it helps explain why I spent 30 years unable to be happy for you, unable to see you as anything other than a threat to my self-worth. I don't expect forgiveness or reconciliation. What I did to you, to Claire, to Maya, to our family, that's not forgivable. But I wanted you to know that I'm not that person anymore. Or at least, I'm trying every day not to be. I hope you're happy. I genuinely mean that now. And it's taken me 2 years of hard work to get to a place where I can say it and mean it. You deserved a better brother. I'm sorry I couldn't be that for you when it mattered. I read the letter 3 times, showed it to Claire, and then filed it away in a drawer with other mementos from my old life. Evidence that people can change, that awareness can lead to growth, that the person who hurt you might eventually understand the depth of their damage, but also evidence that some relationships can't be repaired no matter how much work someone does on themselves, that history leaves scars that don't fade just because someone apologizes, that protecting yourself sometimes means accepting that someone's personal growth happens separate from your life entirely. Claire asked if I wanted to respond, and I thought about it for days. Eventually, I sent a short email to the therapist to forward to Cameron. I'm glad you're getting help. I'm glad you're changing. But I meant what I said before. The damage is too deep for us to have a relationship. I wish you well from a distance. That's all I can offer. I never heard back, and I didn't expect to. Some endings aren't dramatic or satisfying. They're just quiet closures, doors that shut softly and stay closed. Years later, I think about Cameron sometimes, usually when I'm scrolling social media and seeing families with uncomplicated sibling relationships, brothers who genuinely like each other, who celebrate each other's successes without resentment. I think about what we could have been if he'd gotten help sooner, if our parents had intervened differently, if I'd established boundaries before the damage became irreparable. But mostly, I think about what I learned, that you can't fix people who don't want to be fixed, that loyalty without boundaries is just enabling dysfunction, that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to keep participating in someone else's self-destruction. Claire and I have a daughter now, Emma, named after Claire's grandmother. She's 2 years old, fearless and curious, and she has no idea that she has an uncle she'll probably never meet. Someday, I'll tell her the story, age appropriately, because I want her to understand that family relationships require work and respect and honesty, that you're allowed to walk away from people who hurt you even if they share your DNA. When Emma is older and asks why Uncle Cameron isn't in our lives, I won't lie or sugarcoat it. I'll tell her that sometimes people we love make choices that hurt us so badly that staying connected isn't safe or healthy. That forgiveness is possible without reconciliation, that you can wish someone well while also keeping them at a distance. And I'll tell her that the best revenge isn't destroying the person who tried to destroy you. It's building a life so full of love and trust and genuine connection that their absence becomes irrelevant. Cameron tried to take Claire away from me by fabricating evidence and weaponizing lies, but all he actually did was show us both how strong our foundation was, how much we were willing to fight for each other. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.